Hi, welcome to Princess Ninja and Keto. My name is Melanie. Welcome to my home in the sunshiny state of Florida. Now, normally Monday through Friday, I show you what's in my lunchbox. I show you what I'm packing to give you ideas on what you can make for a ketogenic journey and to keep me accountable. Now, every day I take bits and pieces of my life, I strew them all together in a daily vlog. I talk about keto, I talk about health, I talk about your personal relationship with yourself. I talk about self-confidence, body image, exercise, fitness, and any new information that I find out or I discover about my keto journey that may be stalling me, things that are helping me in my journey. But today is much different because today I have now hit the largest non-scale victory of my entire 2-year, 2-day journey. That's right. I have been on the unsustainable keto diet now for 2 years and 2 days. And out of those 2 years and 2 days, I can count the amount of cheat days on 1.5 hands. Okay, I had 3 big cheat days when I went on my first cruise. I had 3 cheat days when I went on my second cruise, and I've had 2 other cheat days, which weren't really full-on cheat days. They were just cheat meals. They were meals that I intentionally consumed knowing that they weren't ketogenic approved, but I did. So I think that's a pretty huge accomplishment considering that I've been keto for more than 700 days now, that I've only had 8 cheat days. That's one cheat. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's one cheat day every 100 days. So I'm super proud of myself. But the reason that I'm doing this video today is because I get a lot of people that conversate with me back and forth. Thank you for the comments. I need that. It helps my channel grow. It definitely helps my algorithm on YouTube. I'm doing this I'm doing this impromptu. So if my dogs are making noise, I apologize. I'm not going to re-record. It is what it is. You've just got life happening around me. Back to the subject at hand. Today is my biggest non-scale victory in over 700 days on the ketogenic journey, and that I, being a recovering binge eater, a former binge eater, I'm now celebrating a record 100 days binge free. Now I'm going to attempt to get through all of this without bawling. For those of you who watched my video last night about today and what a big deal that is, you'll know that I get very choked up, very emotional when I talk about this. But I've had several comments in the 2 years that I've been talking about keto, talking about binge eating, talking about fasting, talking about sucralose spiking my appetite, certain foods making me hungrier than normal, insulin. I've been talking a lot about leptin resistance, how insulin is a hormone that replicates hunger. I've been talking about all the things because one of my biggest shameful moments in my whole career of yo-yo dieting has been that sometimes I have uncontrollable hunger that I couldn't explain before keto. One of the biggest questions that I get, one of the most frequent questions I get is, what are your earliest memories of binge eating? And it took me a while to nail this one down, honestly, because teenagers, let's face it, they'll eat you out of house and home. I was a very active teenager. I played softball, I played soccer, I walked about a mile round trip to my bus stop every day. You know, it wasn't like it is now where they'll pick you up right in front of your house. I had to walk quite a distance, even from elementary school. We had a swimming pool that I spent a lot of time in. I had weekend jobs. I pulled weeds, we mowed lawns, we cleaned pools, we did whatever. So I was incredibly active. I did have my favorite shows back then, but it wasn't like it is today where these kids sit in front of these video games and computers and tablets and phones all day, and they don't go outside, they don't play, they don't get enough fresh air, they don't get enough sunlight. You know what I'm saying? So my childhood was a lot different. It was hard for me to pinpoint one specific day or event that triggered binge eating, but I can tell you that the binge eating started very young with the ravenous hunger. Back then, I wouldn't have known anything about keto. I wouldn't have known anything about hormones. I wouldn't have known anything about insulin. I wouldn't have known anything about leptin resistance, right? I just knew that I could eat a big meal and 2 hours later I was starving to death as if I didn't eat at all, right? There's another hormone involved called ghrelin, but I don't know enough about it to speak factually, so I'm gonna leave that to the experts. Okay, so I was a teenager and I remember coming home from school and making myself these big glasses of milk. Here's the thing. My dad used to buy these huge package of cookies called Big 60 from Winn-Dixie. Any of you that shop at Winn-Dixie, you know what these Big 60 cookies were, right? They're like a generic version of Oreo cookies and they come in like a ton of different flavors. My favorite concoction was to take the vanilla cream cookies from the Big 60 pack and I would stack them literally about 10 high in an 8 to 10 ounce cup, and then I would pour milk over them and walk away. I would walk away for a good 10-15 minutes and then I'd come back and all of the milk would be absorbed into the cookie and I would eat it just like ice cream. That's what it reminded me of. So from a very young age, I developed some very bad habits and some very bad emotional connections with food. I don't think I would have called myself a binge eater in my teenage years. I think I suffered from normal puberty, growing pains, hunger, just being an adolescent. I know teenagers that can wipe out a refrigerator in a day, right? I would say though, I would have classified myself as an emotional eater. Just like most of us, that classic movie, the girl breaks up, you see her with the whole pint of ice cream, that was me. Until I hit around age 19 or 20, I found myself in a really abusive relationship, emotionally abusive, like, you know, with somebody who would look at another woman while I was standing right there and say, damn, she's fine, or say, man, or I would go to eat something and he'd say, you gonna eat all that? You sure you're still hungry? You sure you need that? You know, he would talk about things like that. He would constantly obsess about my weight, which then made me very self-conscious about my weight. And so to prove what a jerk he was, I would eat and become as fat as he was afraid I would become. See how that works? So from about early 20s is when I really started feeling the need, like I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't thin enough. My boobs weren't perky enough. My butt wasn't tight enough. My thighs weren't thin enough. And this developed the obsession dieting. I don't think the true binge eating came until I was in my late 20s, where emotional eating got out of hand. In a very short period of time, I went from excusing eating massive amounts of food to, well, I was emotionally upset. You know what it's like, girl, when you break up with somebody and you're emotional and you eat that. I went to the point where I was eating such a massive quantity of food, I would hide it from people. Like, I would hit the drive-thru before I'd go home for dinner because I was so ashamed, and people did not understand when I would eat a big meal and an hour later I felt like I hadn't eaten anything. I was starving. And people would be like, man, you're a pig, or, you know, they would make some really obscene jokes with me. By the time I hit my 40s, I was a full-on binge eater. And around 35 to 45 is where I went from being a binge eater to being a binge eater, but then starving myself to punish myself for binging. So I think somewhere around age 35, 36, again, in another toxic relationship, imagine that, I would like find this diet and I would be like, that's it. This is my diet. This is what I'm going to do. I know this is going to work. The tears would flow. I'd be watching the infomercial. I'd be relating. I'd be BFFs with everyone in that infomercial. I'd be going, I know exactly how you feel. That's how I feel. This is going to work, right? And one diet after another, 3 flexible, easy payment plans after another. What I would end up doing is I'd go all in. I would give that diet everything that I have. And of course, you know, all the comments about, what do you mean you're not losing weight? Are you sure you're doing it right? Right? So that started to follow. So then I started to shame myself. I started to think, why is everybody else so successful on this diet and I am not? Right? Why am I still hungry? These girls are eating a piece of lettuce and a bowl of cottage cheese and they're fine. They're like, yes, I've eaten this much today and I'm not hungry at all. This isn't bothered. This is the best diet ever. I feel so great, so much energy, right? And then I would get on the diet. I'd get 3 or 4 days in on the diet and then I would be like, I'm freaking starving myself and I'm ready to chew my own arm off. Well, that's when I would start saying what everyone else was saying to me. You're doing it wrong. You've got to be doing something wrong. Something's got to be wrong with you, right? And so I would keep driving forward even though I was starving. I'd keep driving forward even though my hands were shaking. My calories be 800-900 calories a day, but you know, it's okay because I was fat. I could go days without eating, right? And live off my fat stores. That was the thinking. That's what people were telling me. Oh, come on, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You just got to cut back a little more. Exercise a little harder. So then I'd hit the gym. I'd work out until I absolutely could not move a muscle in my body. And I would do it in punishment. And I would actually tell people proudly, yeah, I'm punishing myself for being fat. Well, then somewhere around day 6 or 7 of this new glorious diet that was just going to take care of all of my issues, I would break down. And in one sitting, it was not unspeakable of me to eat 2 or 3 sandwiches or 3 or 4 slices of pizza and then eat a whole pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream and then an hour later be looking for some cookies or eat a yogurt and then throw some granola in another yogurt because that would have tasted better than the first yogurt, and then a bowl of pudding, and it was always sweets. It was always the overindulgence of sweets. I do remember one time, even though I'm embarrassed about it, we're talking about binging, where I sat down and ate an entire Sara Lee cheesecake by myself with an entire tub of Cool Whip. It was that bad. So then, while I was consuming the food, before I reached that point of feeling like I was going to explode, like, oh my gosh, I've eaten too much or I'd get really, really ill, right? Before I reached that sick point, as I was binging on all of these foods, I'd feel this euphoria, this really amazing feeling like, yeah, I finally feel full. I wasn't hungry anymore. And I became addicted to that fix. So, years and years of doing this, of course, I'd lose 10 pounds, I'd gain 12. Then I'd lose that 12 pounds and I'd gain 15. And then I'd lose that 15 pounds and I'd gain 25. Until I reached a point where I weighed 237 pounds, right? And of course, I went back to the old calories in, calories out. But that didn't stop the binging. It didn't stop the binging because I was still in the mindset that the only way I was ever going to lose weight is if I ran that huge calorie deficit. But what I didn't stop to think about is the fact that my body's metabolism had adjusted to all the times. My body knew now, okay, she's starving, she don't have enough food. And was adjusting my metabolism down to where my BMR was not where it used to be 20 years ago before the insanity began. So after trying LoseIt.com, MyFitnessPal, Weight Watchers, I went vegan, I went raw vegan, I went vegetarian and Mediterranean. I found myself repeating the same cycle over and over. Binging and starving, binging and starving. Now, I never made myself throw up. I never got to that point, but I was getting there. I was close. I became a closet eater. I didn't like to eat in front of everybody because I knew that I just knew that everybody was going to judge me for what I was eating. And of course, nobody understood when they could see me eat a big plate of food and then still say, I'm hungry. Nobody understood that. You know, they would tell you, just sip on water, just have some lemon water, you're gonna be fine. But inside you don't feel fine. You feel empty and you're starving and your stomach is growling and you're sitting there going, but I'm starving. That was until I learned about leptin, I learned about insulin, and I learned about ghrelin, which I don't know enough to talk in depth with you. But in the context of talking about just binge eating and the history of yo-yo dieting and why today is so monumentous in my journey, is because I accredit keto, I accredit intermittent fasting, and I accredit my knowledge of insulin resistance, and learning about leptin and how the hormones react to food. And I accredit all of that to my success in 100 days binge free. It's taken me 2 years on keto, constant experimentation, and then finally the calorie reset is what triggered this final length of my journey, which has brought me to standing in front of this camera, testifying before you that keto has definitely changed my life forever. So when I first started keto, I got into the keto game like everyone else. I had to have the Quest bars and I had to have the milkshakes and I had to learn how to make all the Fabbombs and all the sweets and all the chips and all the cheats. And I was constantly going through social media looking for that next fix. The only thing I did was I substituted the macronutrients. I took away the raw carbohydrates and I'm like, yeah, but it's net carbs. You know, at the end of the day, I'd be sitting there with my calculator. I'd have 72 carbs, but guess what? 52 of them were alcohol sugars or fiber. But I was still in the mindset that I could not lose weight unless I really lowered my calories. I didn't stop to think about the ingredients in food or anything. After a year on keto, when I started having some confidence with my hunger, remember this has been the consistent through my whole entire experience, even from childhood. My earliest memory was the fact that I couldn't control my hunger. It's like I didn't have that trigger that told me I was full. Like I didn't have the receptor that triggered, hey, you're full, stop eating. Not only that, but then an hour later, I was starving again. Remember, this has been the theme and this has been the trigger for all of my binge eating, all of my yo-yo diets, everything. And so that first year on keto, when I discovered that I could actually eat 12 to 1,500 calories and not feel like I'm starving to death, when I realized that my cravings for sugar were gone, when I realized I no longer craved chips and bread and all of those other things, that doesn't mean that when someone's eating in front of me that it doesn't trigger a memory that might make me momentarily want that food. But when I could have total and complete self-control. And that is when I started feeling like I was strong enough and I was well enough that I could tackle the binging. And I really didn't open up and talk to even my keto community about my former binge eating because I was so embarrassed. I would call them cheat days, but I would show them my calories, 37, 47, even a couple 5,200 calorie days. And it was all keto food. It was all keto food. So I had to figure out, okay, what's going on with me that's causing me to binge? And it was entering my second year into keto that I realized this cannot just be about weight loss. This has got to be about Melanie learning to come to terms with who I am. I had to figure out what is making me binge. I had to figure out what are my triggers. I had to figure out what foods are bothering me. And I went super strict last October. I did an elimination diet. And on top of that, I did total carnivore, but I also regulated my calories in a slow, progressive calorie reset, which means I started at about 1,300 calories a day eating carnivore, strict carnivore, and then for 3 or 4 days, I'd go up to 1,400 calories. And then for 3 or 4 days, I'd go up to 1,450 calories. And for 3 or 4 days, and I just kept raising my calories in small 50 to 100 calorie increments. I did that over a period of 90 days while doing carnivore. And not only was I able to lose some weight, lose some inches, but surprisingly enough, I discovered about 6 foods that were causing a major inflammatory response, foods that don't normally affect people. I learned about foods like sucralose. Sucralose was, so I used to test my blood sugar after I would eat a food, and that would be my determination on whether it was keto friendly or not. But little did I know that when you test your blood sugar and you consume something and 30 minutes later your blood sugar is even lower, that's not a good thing. That product did not drive your sugar down. What happened was it didn't create a glucose response, but it created an insulin response, which then drove what blood sugar you did have down. That is when I learned that Swerve, so in the beginning of my journey, I thought Swerve was an okay sweetener. It was not. It was spiking my insulin. It wasn't touching my glucose, but it was giving me an insulin response. I found out that tomatoes and onions are also inflammatory for me. If I eat one inch slice of tomato, I'm guaranteed to gain 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of water the next day. I had to give up tomatoes. But on the emotional side, when we talk about keto and we talk about binging, the biggest hurdle that has gotten me to this 100 days binge-free has been me surrendering to my Lord and Savior and giving this to Him. Because along with giving this to Him, I've had to surrender the fact that my keto journey can't look like your keto journey. I've had to surrender the fact that I can't have the keto ice creams, and I can't have the Quest bars, and I can't have the new perfect keto cookies, and I can't have what everyone else, or it feels like everyone else is having, because not only am I talking about being on keto for my nutrition, for my health, and for my longevity, but my emotional state, which was coming to the acceptance that by eating keto sweets, it was triggering cravings for more keto sweets. It's kind of like an alcoholic drinking a non-alcoholic beer. Why would you want to continue the behavior minus the alcohol? Same thing with keto, same thing with carbohydrates. Now, in those occasions where I absolutely am dying to have something, say a birthday party, say I'm at a big, huge event, a once-in-a-lifetime deal, would a cup of enlightened ice cream kill me? No, absolutely not. I'm completely and totally aware and in control now, understanding exactly how my body works. But it wasn't easy to get here. I had to do 2 different phases of an elimination diet, and I had to track and log and weigh my food and stay disciplined and on course, and it was hard. It was very hard, but I did it, and here I am with results. Some of you will find this to be easier. Some of you will pick up the ketogenic diet, and for the next 30 days, you will ace it. You will give up all the things. You will feel so amazing in your 30 days that you're like, why would I ever want to go back to the food? Some of you will see enough weight loss, a tremendous amount of weight loss, that alone will be your motivation to keep going forward. For those of you with eating disorders, let me tell you what keto can do. Keto can teach you a great deal about your body, what foods affect you and what foods do not affect you. Keto can get your cravings and your appetite suppressant under control so that you can meticulously bring your calories to a level where you can successfully and consistently lose weight without feeling deprived. And that's what keto has been for me. That's all I got for you tonight, guys. This is almost a 30-minute video, but I had to do this video. It was something that was in me all day. It was calling on my heart, and I don't know if this video impacts you. Please let me know what you think below. Do you have any more questions for me? Is there another type of video you would like me to do addressing this situation, addressing this subject? Are you someone who is prone to binge eating? Have you ever tried keto before? If you have, let me know. Let me know how things are going for you. And if you were a former binge eater, comment below and let me celebrate your major accomplishment. But normally my videos are about 10 to 12 minutes long. Tonight deserved 30 minutes. It definitely deserved 30 minutes. I want to thank any one of you that are still here at the end of this video. I want to please remind you to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Give it a thumbs up if you like the content of this video. And, don't be afraid to share. Or if someone comes to you and says they're having trouble binging, share this video with them and let them know that it can be done. I'm living, walking proof. I hope you guys had an amazing day. I'll see you tomorrow with another daily vlog. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.